We're also watching Starbucks this morning. The stock is edging lower as the coffee chain opens its first reserve store today in Seattle. Joining me right now in a Fox Business exclusive is Starbucks Executive Chairman Howard Schultz. Howard, it's good to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Maria, great to be with you.
I want to ask you about the Reserve grand opening. Congratulations to you. But first, let me take you through what we're talking about here, and that's the broad economy. We just heard the prepared testimony from Jay Powell. What can you tell us in terms of inflation, in terms of price increases, what you're seeing from your business?
Well, I think throughout the country we're seeing a consumer that has much more optimism today than over the last couple of years. In terms of the Starbucks business and what we're trying to do, we believe that we can create a premium experience. You're sitting here in the most beautiful Starbucks store we've ever built. We're going to open close to 700 new stores this year because of the optimism we have about the economy and consumer behavior, and we're bullish on the U.S.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this, Howard, because we're talking about wages, and we're focused on wages in terms of what that means for the Federal Reserve. What are you seeing in terms of wage increases? Are you seeing a tighter labor market today?
Well, I think with unemployment now less than 5%, there certainly is a tightening with regard to available people. But as a result of the values and benefits that Starbucks has been offering, free college tuition, things of that nature, I think people want to work for a company whose purpose and cause is something they can relate to. It's not only about wages, it's about being part of something larger than themselves. Starbucks is now currently employing 350,000 people worldwide, almost 200,000 people in the U.S. Our attrition rate is lower than any other retailer in our industry because of the kind of relationship we have with our employees. And we've always said that the equity of the Starbucks brand is defined by the relationship and trust we have with our people, and that is what has built the company.
So let's talk about that. You're taking action in the wake of the tax reform. Howard, how are Starbucks employees benefiting from this new tax law?
Well, we had approximately a $500 million benefit as a result of the tax cut. I personally did not believe that America needed a 21% corporate tax cut. But as a result of that, we gave a significant part of that tax benefit back to our people on top of what we had already done over the last couple of years. So I think we're one of the few companies in America that recognize that in order to really benefit from the tax cut, we had to share our success with our people. And I think that has been the hallmark in the history and the tradition and heritage of our company all along.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're one of, I think it's 200 companies, Howard, that are passing on that savings to employees, whether it be what you're doing in terms of stock or in terms of new money or these $1,000 bonus checks that we keep hearing about from companies passing on that tax savings to employees. But you aren't a fan of the tax plan going into it.
Well, I wasn't, because I thought that there was a real opportunity for comprehensive tax reform. We did not really get tax reform. We got a significant corporate tax cut, which I think will benefit the economy and obviously benefit the companies and shareholders. But I think we could have done a lot more to help so many Americans who are being left behind.
What would you have liked to do instead, Howard?
Well, for one thing, I think this could have been tied to infrastructure. This could have been tied to education and learning. There are a number of opportunities that I think we'll look back on and say we missed an opportunity to do a lot more for the American people. And I think when you look at the tax cut unto itself, that 21% tax cut is going to add over $1 trillion to an already $21 trillion debt. And I think we are not paying much attention to that while we are robbing from the future of young people in America who ultimately are going to have to pay for a $21 trillion tax deficit. Now, I think the question we should be asking ourselves is, what kind of country do we want to really live in? Do we want to live in a country where the U.S. is sitting with $21 trillion in debt? I don't think so. Do we want to live in a country where kids are afraid to go to school because there is a potential for violence? I don't think so. And do we want to live in a country in which the tax cut could have been a comprehensive tax reform that could have benefited lots of people, not only corporations? So I think there's an opportunity to take a more sensible approach to all of these big, complex issues in which there's compromise on both sides.
Right.
And ideology does not rule the day.
Howard, increasingly, you've always focused on big, broad issues. But increasingly, as you look at what the country may or may not need, it sounds more and more like you are running for something. Are you going to run for president in 2020, Howard?
No, I'm not. Here we are sitting at Starbucks because of my day job as executive chairman. On the heels of opening the most successful Starbucks store in our history in China. Now we're opening reserve stores. I'm trying to do everything I can to benefit our shareholders as executive chairman. And I think as a private citizen, very concerned about doing everything I can to elevate the national conversation to things that are not based on ideology, but really trying to walk in the shoes of the American people and doing everything I possibly can to try and get some real, I think, sensible levels of conversation that represent both sides and reach a compromise on things that are really important for the future of the nation.
And you've done that for many years. You are always seeing your position as a responsibility to bring people together. I know that. So just to clarify, you said you're not going to run for president?
I said that I'm doing everything I possibly can as a private citizen to advance the cause of the country.
It sounds like you're running for president, Howard.
No, I didn't say that. Come on, Maria.
All right. Let's talk about the reserve brand.